Good evening, everybody. Welcome to tonight's webinar, the third in our Roots of Health series. Tonight, our subject is the gut rules. My name is Russell Mariani, and I live in South Hadley, Massachusetts. That's a photo of me. There we go. And my wife and business partner is Megan Moore, and together we run the Center for Functional Nutrition and Mariani Wellness Associates, along with our two sons, Brian and Evan Mariani. I'm a health educator and digestive wellness expert. I'm the author of the book, Healing Digestive Illness, which was originally published in 2006, with a revised and updated second edition in 2015. I've been in private practice since 1980, and our website is healingdigestiveillness.com. The purpose of tonight's webinar is to explain what the intestinal microbiome is, why it's so important to our overall health and well-being, and what the rules are to get it healthy and keep it healthy. So to clarify, the word gut is slang for intestinal microbiome. In tonight's webinar, I'll be providing answers, explanations, and clarifications for these questions. What is the intestinal microbiome? Why is it so important? And what are the rules to get it healthy and keep it healthy? So, the intestinal microbiome is an ecosystem of organisms, thousands of trillions of single-celled organisms, mostly bacteria, that live inside the 30-foot-long tube that begins within our mouth, goes down our esophagus, our throat, into our stomach, then through 24 feet of small intestine and 5 feet of large intestine. This is our digestive system. So the organisms living in the intestinal microbiome are in two categories: friendly bacteria, or probiotics, and unfriendly bacteria, or dysbiotics. You can also think of these organisms as the good bacteria and the bad bacteria. The friendly bacteria eat your food, digest your food, and eliminate waste products into the intestinal environment. The waste products of the friendly bacteria are health-promoting and health-enhancing. The waste products of the friendly bacteria help to restore, maintain, and optimize normal functions inside the digestive system. They help to maintain the acid and alkaline balances throughout the entire system. This prevents gas and bloating. The waste products of the healthy organisms produce all of our B vitamins, which support our immune system. They produce enzymes and hormones to regulate and enhance all digestive system functions. They produce the most powerful antibiotics ever discovered, which will kill off most of the germs that we take in through the foods we eat, the beverages we drink, the air we breathe, without causing any adverse side effects like pharmaceutically derived antibiotics. Now, the unfriendly bacteria also eat our food and eliminate waste products. But the waste products of the unfriendly bacteria cause many problems. The waste products of the unfriendly bacteria are toxic to the normal functions of the digestive system. When the populations of unfriendly bacteria get too large, the following symptoms begin to show up and eventually take over: gas, bloating, cramping, abdominal discomfort, abdominal pain, belching, burping, heartburn, acid reflux, constipation, diarrhea, poor absorption of nutrients, weight loss or weight gain, food sensitivities, depression, anxiety, mood disorders, cognitive dysfunctions, bad breath, skin problems, eczema, psoriasis, acne, rosacea, yeast overgrowth, headaches, nausea, chronic fatigue, achy muscles, achy joints. The list of negative symptoms associated with an overgrowth of the unfriendly organisms in the gut is almost endless. In other words, everything is downstream of the intestinal microbiome, or as Hippocrates, the father of Western medicine, said, all disease begins in the gut. In other words, if our intestinal microbiome is healthy, then we are healthy. If our intestinal microbiome is not healthy, then we suffer. It's as simple as that. Now, in a healthy human intestinal microbiome, we're supposed to have 80% or more of our ecosystem of organisms be friendly bacteria or probiotics. And we're supposed to have 20% or less be dysbiotics or unfriendly organisms. Due to poor dietary choices, chlorinated water, additives and preservatives in our foods, herbicides and pesticide residues in our food, antibiotics, pain medications, over-the-counter medications for all kinds of reasons, and many other negative and insulting influences, this ideal 80-20 balance is gradually and sometimes rapidly interrupted and seriously impaired. Anything other than this ideal 80-20 balance is called dysbiosis. Intestinal dysbiosis means that there's an overgrowth of the unfriendly or bad organisms in the gut. It's like the weeds taking over your garden. It is the #1 cause of all digestive system disorders, conditions, and symptoms, and it's the cause of many other downstream conditions and symptoms. So keeping this ideal 80-20 balance between the friendly bacteria and the unfriendly bacteria is the key to our intestinal health. So how do we keep this ideal balance? By knowing the gut rules and following the gut rules. So here's a simple and brief overview. Rule #1, nothing is neutral. Nothing that we eat, drink, take for supplements, or take for medicine has no impact on the functioning of our digestive system and the condition of our intestinal microbiome. Everything is either complementary or insulting to these functions. Most importantly, how we eat and when we eat and where we eat and why we eat, how much we eat, are as important and sometimes more important than what we eat. Most people and most practitioners are only focused on what we eat, and this perspective misses many of the causes of digestive system disorders and overall dis-ease. So I'm going to provide some lists of the most insulting and most complementary foods, habits, and influences in our diet and lifestyle over the next few slides. Then I'll stop the slideshow part of this presentation and go to an open conversation and dialogue format, answer some questions that are coming in right now and some that have come in over the previous week, and then elaborate on some of the most important complementary and insulting influences. So please keep in mind this important distinction as I go over the information in the next few slides. Insulting foods, beverages, habits, and influences feed the bad organisms, while complementary foods, beverages, habits, and influences feed the good organisms. And basically, we want to do everything we can to feed, nourish, and strengthen the good organisms. We want to essentially starve the bad organisms. Okay, so what are the most insulting foods and beverages? All processed foods, butter, flour, sugar combinations, bread, cookies, cakes, pies, processed breakfast cereals, all processed sugars, white sugar, brown sugar, honey, maple syrup, barley malt, rice syrup, molasses, all genetically modified foods, all GMO foods, genetically modified organisms. All conventionally grown grains, fruits, and vegetables, because all conventionally grown foods contain residues of herbicides, pesticides, and fungicides. Drinking unfiltered tap water. Milk in excess, cream, half and half, skim milk, alcohol, beer, wine, any alcohol of any kind, smoking, cigars, cigarettes, coffee and caffeinated drinks of any kind, any source of caffeine, soda, diet sodas, and most carbonated beverages. Occasional use of sparkling water is fine, but daily use of any carbonated beverage causes impairment to the microbiome. Okay, so what are some of the most insulting habits? Not chewing each mouthful thoroughly. I'll elaborate on chewing during the Q&A. Eating too fast. Eating standing up. eating to fullness, eating too late at night, eating anything too cold, drinking anything too cold, eating things that are too spicy, and too many smoothies or excess use of the blender. It's shocking to me how many people don't eat food anymore. They just throw everything in the blender thinking that that is the ideal scenario, and it's not. Of course, if that works and you have perfect digestive system health, then go for it. But many of the people I work with, one of their biggest insults is putting everything in a blender. Okay, now what are some of the most insulting influences? Microwave ovens, excessive use of microwave ovens. Excessive restaurant eating, eating when angry or upset, eating in the car, eating in front of the TV, especially when the news is on, arguing at the dinner table, and tight-fitting pants. You'd be amazed how many people wear tight-fitting pants, have all kinds of GI problems, and all they need to do is loosen up their pants, and things will feel a lot better. All right, now, what are some of the most complementary foods and beverages? Organic quality whole foods, cooked whole grains, beans, and root vegetables, cooked cruciferous vegetables, vine vegetables, green leafy vegetables, and some degree of raw organic vegetables. Obviously, that's fine. Fresh fruits in season, dry roasted seeds and nuts and nut butters, antibiotic-free, growth hormone-free, grass-fed, free-range animal foods, meats, chicken, fish, game, fowl. In other words, if we eat any animal foods, we want to make sure that those animals have been raised in very healthy environments and were harvested, if you want to use that term, or processed in humane ways. And naturally fermented foods like sauerkraut and kimchi. Okay, now what are some of the most complementary habits? Always be grateful at mealtimes. Always sit down when you eat. Always eat slowly and chew thoroughly. Always leave room in your stomach for more food. In other words, don't eat to fullness. Eat more food earlier in the day in general. It's like this famous saying, you know, king, prince, pauper. Eat like a king at breakfast, a prince at lunch, and a pauper at dinner. Many problems can be decreased. The severity can be decreased or eliminated completely by eating more early in the day and less in the evening, and in some cases, nothing in the evening until the symptoms clear up. And then regular meal times, the body in general, and the digestive system in particular, favors regular meal times, not chaotic meal times. And of course, proper daily hydration is essential for proper digestion, absorption and assimilation of nutrients, and elimination of waste. Okay, and so what are some of the most complementary influences? Mindfulness, attention to all habits, choices, and influences. Gratitude for the sources and growers of our food. Moderate, daily, enjoyable exercise. Homemade meals. Whole foods cooking classes. It's absolutely amazing to me how over a 40-year period, when I interview people and find out what their background is related to food and cooking, how few people have ever taken a cooking class and how fewer people have ever taken a healthy cooking class or a whole foods cooking class. Again, you can join an organic food co-op or participate in a CSA, community-supported agriculture. Sharing meals with friends and family, having enjoyable conversations during a meal, not stressful conversations during a meal. And of course, laughter is the best medicine. Now, as we go to the Q&A section, and I have a short list of questions that have come through, so I'll start with those. But let me be clear as we move to this next section. I want people to do what they want to do. In other words, if you're perfectly healthy right now, please keep doing what you're doing. Please keep eating what you're eating. Please keep drinking what you're drinking. And please keep your habits and influences as they are. In other words, if you're perfectly healthy, You don't need to make any changes. However, if you are suffering from any negative symptoms or conditions, I invite you to consider that the presentation this evening and these lists of complementary and insulting foods, beverages, habits, and influences are a good place to start to begin to find solutions. It's no fun having an unhappy belly. And the goal, of course, is to have a quiet, peaceful, happy belly. Okay, now let's see if I can get out of this presentation mode. Okay, that was successful. And let me just go here and then stop my video. Okay, so hopefully you can all see me. Just need a sip of water. Okay, so I am planning to end the webinar right around 8 o'clock tonight. And let's see. So I do have a bunch of questions that have come in during the first 15 minutes here, and a few questions that have come in prior to the webinar. So the first question is, what bad organisms are included with the term dysbiosis? And the answer is, it's a short list, but yeast, candida albicans, mold, fungus, worms, parasites, viruses, bacteria. And the sources for these problematic organisms can be constipation, a history of constipation, unresolved fecal matter throughout the colon, and of course food poisoning, and all the other insulting foods, habits, and influences. It's really amazing how symptoms develop after people take antibiotics. Because unfortunately in the United States, people are given antibiotics all the time. Now the antibiotics kill all the bad organisms, but they also kill off all the good organisms. And it's extremely rare, in my experience, that when people are given antibiotics, when they're prescribed antibiotics, nobody tells them about taking probiotics. Nobody tells them or instructs them how to build up the new healthy microbiome. So this is a huge problem. Most people who develop IBS, irritable bowel syndrome, most people who develop intestinal dysbiosis, which is the big problem, which, as we said in the earlier, is an overgrowth of the wrong kind of organism. Dysbiosis is an overgrowth of the bad organisms. So that is often triggered by antibiotics, all the other insulting habits and behaviors. It's also amazing how many people had no history of digestive disorder whatsoever. In other words, perfectly normal functioning, but they turned 50 or 55 and they went in to have their very first colonoscopy. And the combination of the bowel prep and the colonoscopy itself introduced bad organisms into their system, and they started having symptoms, right after completing the colonoscopy. Okay, so those are the organisms included with the term dysbiosis. Okay, next question is, why is chewing so important? So basically, this is one of those situations where everybody knows you're supposed to chew, but very few people do it. In fact, the next time you eat a meal, the next time you eat anything, you should make a commitment to pay attention to how long you chew the first mouthful of food before you reflexively start swallowing. And you'll be surprised, I'm sure, because you're going to start swallowing before you've even chewed that mouthful 10 times. I've done this many times over my life, and I've asked hundreds and hundreds of people to do this over the same period of time. So if you took 100 people off the street and asked them how many times you're supposed to chew each mouthful of food, most people would say at least 32. And many other people would say 50 times, and some people would say even 100 times. So why is chewing your food so important? People think that they don't have to chew their food because digestion will happen in their stomach. Well, here's the news. There are three types of food: carbohydrates, complex carbohydrates, and refined carbohydrates, protein, and fat. Most of the food we eat is in the category of carbohydrate. All carbohydrates are digested in our mouth via chewing. So chewing not only breaks down the physical food into liquid or close to liquid, it should at least be baby food consistency, but chewing causes our liver and pancreas to produce more enzymes. The more we chew, the enzyme responsible for the breaking down of carbohydrates is something called amylase, salivary amylase. And that digestive enzyme, amylase, is in our saliva. So the more we chew, the more saliva we produce, the more amylase we produce. If we do not break down and fully digest complex carbohydrates in our mouth, it doesn't happen anywhere else. And so the incomplete breaking down of carbohydrates causes many symptoms: gas, bloating, cramping, constipation, diarrhea, all the symptoms I mentioned earlier. So chewing is not optional, it's completely mandatory. And if you want to see how much control you have over your digestive system function before you go running out and taking supplements and taking over-the-counter remedies for gas, bloating, cramping, just slow down, and every meal for the next 5 days, chew every mouthful at least 50 times, preferably 100 times. Take your time, put the fork down in between bites. You will see, you will experience dramatic results, dramatic improvement. In fact, if anybody out there watching this right now has any form of upper GI indigestion, heartburn, acid reflux, gas, burping, belching, anything like that, this is the remedy right here. You don't have to do anything more than chew your food properly and correctly. And if you have any type of degenerative condition, chewing your food is absolutely critical to saving energy through the rest of your body. So many people think, oh, I'll just chew my food kind of haphazardly. My stomach will digest the rest, or my intestines will digest the rest. Doesn't work that way. As I said, complex carbohydrates and refined carbohydrates get digested in the mouth. Your stomach digests proteins, and your small intestine digests fat. Bile is produced in the liver and sent into the duodenum, the top part of the small intestine, through the gallbladder. So the bile emulsifies fat, digests fat. But if you don't chew your food, most of the food that you eat is not being properly and thoroughly digested. And all you have to remember, or all you have to do, is eat corn on the cob and, kind of eat it normally. Don't chew every mouthful perfectly. And some of those kernels of corn will not get chewed, will not get broken down, and they will pass through your entire digestive system and come out into the toilet bowl. In fact, you can test how quickly food is moving through your system by either swallowing some warmed up frozen corn kernels or eating corn on the cob and not paying full attention. Okay, so chewing is absolutely one of the most important complementary habits there are. Okay, so here's another question. What are prebiotics? So probiotics are the actual friendly or helpful bacteria. And they eat your food and produce waste products that are completely helpful to the overall process of digestion. So prebiotics are simply foods that are conducive to the health and growth of the probiotics. So all healthy, organic quality whole foods are considered prebiotics. All naturally fermented foods are prebiotics, including foods like miso and tamari. These are prebiotics. They help the growth of the probiotics. Okay, and you can say, so another reason to focus on prebiotic food is because those are the foods that improve the health of the probiotics. So that all those lists of insulting foods, habits, and behaviors, those foods feed the dysbiotics, the bad organisms. And we don't want to do that. Okay, so what about probiotics, supplemental probiotics? I first started taking supplemental probiotics back in 1990 and saw a dramatic improvement in my digestive system function. So I totally, completely recommend for supplements, superfoods, digestive enzymes, and probiotics. And if you're interested in learning what specifically products we use and recommend, just send just connect through our website, and we'll be happy to give you that information. But basically, because of all the negative influences in our diet, in our lifestyle, in the environment, there are so many factors at play 24 hours a day that disrupt and impair the function of our probiotics, that taking them supplementally is not really an option. It's really, really necessary. Excuse me. Okay, so I think we have time for one more question here. So this is a very interesting question, and thank you to the person who sent this in. So the question is basically, what if I do all these things that you've been talking about? What if I identify all the insulting habits, behaviors, and influences and get rid of them, take them out of my diet, take them out of my lifestyle? And what if I'm doing all or most of the complementary foods, habits, behaviors, influences that I've talked about here in the webinar, and still I have digestive distress. I still have a digestive disorder. I still have irritable bowel. I still have an inflammatory bowel. What if I've done all those things? I've tried all those things. What do I do then? So this is the type of situation where most people call me, and then I end up working with them one-on-one, taking them through my program, my intestinal regeneration program. So the truth is that sometimes the condition, the condition of intestinal dysbiosis is so bad, is so serious, the proportion or imbalance of the bad organisms to the good organisms, instead of being 80% good and 20% or less bad, some people have it the very opposite. They have 80% of the organisms in their system that are dysbiotic. They have such a severe case of intestinal dysbiosis that it simply doesn't respond to making all those changes. And in that situation, the only thing that I have found to work is to walk somebody through a comprehensive cleanse and reconditioning of the microbiome. We use very specialized herbs to neutralize the toxic impact or outgassing of those bad organisms. So we neutralize the toxins, and then we literally suffocate the bad organisms, and then slowly but surely escort that entire population of bad organisms out of the system and into the toilet bowl. And that is a process that takes a little time. It does not happen overnight. In fact, for most people, for most people going through this process, it takes a minimum of 3 weeks, and sometimes as much as 3 to 5, sometimes as long as 5 to 6 weeks. So if that is your situation, if you literally feel like you've tried everything and you're at the end of your rope and you don't know what else to do, you could purchase my book, and read, because the explanation of how to do this on your own is in the book, and some people have done that. But many people, by the time they get to that point of that level of dysbiosis, they're so uncomfortable and on their own to just contact me directly and see what the possibilities are for working with me directly one-on-one. And so again, if you just go to the website, my phone number is there, my email address is there. We actually have a free consultation form, free 30-minute consultation. So that's usually the best bet for people who are really struggling and have really tried many different things and nothing has worked so far. But this will work. And then once we remove all those bad organisms, we then build up a new and healthy microbiome, and then simply learning how to maintain a healthy microbiome by making complementary choices, habits, decisions in the 7 root cause areas. That's the best way to maintain not only your digestive system health forever, but your overall health and well-being. Okay, so that brings us to the end of our webinar tonight on the subject of the gut rules. Just 2 quick announcements before I say goodnight and goodbye. So there is a 20% off sale on my book, Healing Digestive Illness, when you buy through the website. And this will be until midnight tomorrow, April 17th. So simply go to go to healingdigestiveillness.com, and the promotional code is gut rules 20%. That's all one word, and it is case sensitive. So it's capital G, small u, small p, capital R, small u, small L-E-S, 20%. Okay. And then last announcement is that our next Roots of Health webinar will be on Tuesday, May 14th at 7:30 p.m. Eastern Time. And the subject will be micronutrients and macronutrients. So thank you very much for taking time out of your busy schedule here on a Tuesday evening. Thank you very much for sending in your questions. I hope this was helpful. And again, if you're experiencing any type of serious problem, please don't hesitate to call, text, or email. And with that, I will say good night and see you soon.